Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Torres, coming live from Barcelona, from my humble office. If this is the first time you tune in, a quick intro of the podcast. We've been interviewing top consumer goods and retail leaders in Europe and beyond for the last 4+ years, and now have over 240 episodes with over 23,000 followers on LinkedIn. And we're also part of a family of podcasts. Yes, indeed, we have a podcast in the other side of the Atlantic, the CPG Guys, based in the US, and they cover everything in the omni consumer goods world at the other side of the Atlantic. So do tune into the show. I think they're about to reach episode 500. So pretty impressive. And here on the show, we've interviewed many leaders from the big companies out there, but we also like to invite the more emerging companies, the ones that are disrupting, as the old word used to say. And I think today's guest is one example of that. Somebody that's come from big companies, but is now leading a small disruptor in a category. This is Richard Peake, is the MD of Merchant Gourmet. Hey, Richard, good to see you.
Hi, thanks for having me on. I like to be described as a disruptor.
You remember when the big companies were all talking about disrupting themselves? I don't know whatever happened to that trend, but they don't talk in these terms anymore.
No, I think a lot of them used to say they want to be big but act small. Which is a sort of slight oxymoron in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what the general trend is now in terms of. I don't think there's any particular fashion right now in amongst big companies of disrupt ourselves or act small or break things.
I don't know. It's a good question. I've been out of a very big business for too long to know what
that's true.
But I can only guess.
That's true. Yeah, it's been some time. So first of all, can you tell me a bit about Merchant Gourmet? What do you do as a company, and what do you personally do there as well?
Yeah, of course. Merchant Gourmet is actually a lot older than people think. So it was founded 30 years ago by two brothers, Mark and Ollie Leatham. And basically, they had this massive passion for food. So they were huge foodies. And they essentially set up a business where they imported really interesting food and ingredients from around the world and actually started selling them into high-end food service. So kind of top food service around London, and built out this quite big food service and actually ingredients business. And then they decided, as some of those ingredients became more mainstream, to put them into retail. So they kind of set up this business called Merchant Gourmet, with kind of merchant being the nod to finding things from around the world, and gourmet being the quality bit. And that's how the business was born. And I joined 5 years ago. I think probably as the business had sort of cruised along nicely and got to kind of 14-15 million revenue. But they could see that actually some of those trends, particularly, and we can kind of come on to it, but particularly convenience, global flavors, minimally processed food, was becoming much more relevant. And they could see an opportunity to kind of really grow the business. So I came in to help sort of really turbocharge growth of the business. And I've been here 5 years. So we've sort of got to a run rate of sort of just over 30 million now. So we've had a really interesting growth journey. And lots of
what does the business what does the business look like in terms of your products, your categories?
Yeah, God, I even missed that out totally, didn't I? We do. We basically have various different products. They're broadly kind of pulses and grains and veg forward products. So right away from things which are more for kind of confident cooks, so dried lentils, dried pulses, etc., all the way through to kind of hyper convenience ready meals. So a puy lentil bolognese or a tagine or a black lentil dal, etc. So kind of all the way through that spectrum.
So it's
Probably
from
got about
ingredients.
40 different lines now.
It's from ingredients to cook to like ready-made meals. Then you have like the whole array.
Exactly, all the way through the spectrum. Yeah, for all sorts of different uses and people.
And what is like the underlying connector or differentiator of the brand?
Yeah, good question. I mean, the thing which sort of sets us apart and kind of gives us that moat, if you like, I think is like quality and convenience are the two things that we always talk about. The brand is definitely synonymous with high quality and amazing taste. So they're the absolute non-negotiables for us.
Got it. And tell me a bit about like your background briefly. Like I know that you mentioned that you've been a long way from corporate now, and I actually saw on your LinkedIn profile, as you would, that you started your career in Mars, spent 8 years there, and then tell me a bit about it.
Yeah. I did. So I started my career at Mars, probably because my parents told me I needed to go to a big business and learn the ropes. And really loved it there. It was an amazing business, really good training ground, great people. They put a lot of time and effort into development. But I think, probably a couple of years before I left, I started, as often you do, to question what I guess kind of what my role was and what value I was adding, both to the business and to kind of society in general, really. And felt like I wanted to do something where I could make more of a difference. And that's probably both in terms of the impact and the positivity that the product could make in the world, but also personally, the difference I could make in such a massive organization. Yeah. I had a real desire to do something a bit more entrepreneurial. And then behaviorally, actually, I probably realized that I wasn't necessarily made for kind of like big structural businesses. I tended to get frustrated quite a lot with pace. So I just felt like it was it was necessary for me to have a change.
Interesting. And then you moved to Method, right?
Yeah. Moved to Method. And that definitely what kind of ignited my passion for...
Which Method is like a kind of eco-friendly, like progressive, and even an ideological sense, detergents and cleaning products, right?
Exactly. It was such a massive shift from like chocolate and confectionery to cleaning products. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of non-toxic, eco-friendly cleaning products with kind of a stylistic element to them, I would say. And it was just so much fun. Like the role was basically to kind of, I mean, Method had launched in the UK, but had only just launched. Ecover was an established brand that needed like fully rebranding. So it was like a super fast-paced, high growth story. Method really kind of took off, and just like the whole journey was so much fun. And as I say, it was almost so much easier to galvanize people behind, driving loads of growth, but doing something really positive at the same time. Yeah. And impactful. It became more than a job. And I think that's definitely a mantra that I've kind of taken on.
Yeah. Interesting. I mean, you mentioned that it's very different, but at the end of the day, like you're kind of managing the same customers, no? So I guess that there was some transferables there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're serving the same purpose, and everyone's got to clean, and lots of people. So you're absolutely right. The skills that you learn are like highly transversal. You just need to apply them in a very different way.
Yeah. And because then clearly you went to a Lily's Kitchen, food for pets, and then energy bars, right? So
yeah, exactly. And again, Lily's Kitchen, a really kind of interesting impact business, a B Corp business in another fairly, what's the word, like boring category, you could say, in pet food, but actually found a really interesting way to disrupt that category by, humanizing and premiumizing pet food.
Yeah.
And again, a super fast growth story, which it was really good to be a part of.
Yeah, I can imagine. And from all in all, like, is there like, key lessons that you've learned at these brands that you've worked, and maybe some anecdotes that you've learned even that were like aha moments?
Yeah, yes, probably lot. I mean, I've learned lots because I got so much wrong. I think one of my biggest things, and I guess this is kind of like the journey, right, from being very big and very structured into very small, is actually the need for structure and the need for process. But how you can kind of link that with a highly empowering culture. And that's a really interesting mix. And the reason I say I've got things wrong is because, some of the smaller businesses I've gone into, I've been like, oh, amazing. We don't need any of this now. We can just be super agile, make quick decisions, throw all the structure out the window. And it's an absolute car crash because people require the structure even more actually in a smaller business. And likewise, I've probably gone too structured in the other route. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of like, I mean, I've got young children, so I've always got them on my brain, but it's kind of like, with kids, they need structure. They think they don't, but they need structure. And actually, the more structure you give them, like putting them to bed at the same time, they eat at the same time, they get up at roughly the same time, the better humans they basically become. But then outside of that, the best way for them to learn is to play and to explore and be intrigued and ask questions and get things wrong and try things again. I just think it's a really interesting read across to like humans in general from that at work. It's like, people need, they crave structure. It's something that like I probably need a bit less of, but I can totally see it in other people. But once they've got that, they then love the kind of freedom within it. So, that's been a learning. I think the other one for me very personally is the importance of humility and vulnerability and like understanding and calling out where I've got things wrong and probably understanding what I'm not good at. I've become really clear over the years that I'm not, I've sort of said this before, I don't particularly excel at anything. And I can guarantee that I could hire somebody better than me in any particular functional discipline. And it's kind of taken me a while to get comfortable with that. But then I've become much clearer on what my role is and what I can do, which is actually to elevate talent and to kind of allow super talented people to thrive and create the conditions and culture around that. And again, that's just comes with a bit of time and a bit of learning. And
and that's
I feel like I've applied a lot of that at MG.
That's an interesting one also because it is different, like the type of trajectory and not culture, the trajectory and like type of like environment that you can create in a Mars than what you can create in a company of 100 people. No, how do you do that? Like have like an environment where you have like ambitious people that go for it. But at the same time, maybe you can't guarantee them like the next 3 roles.
Yeah. I feel like the kind of formula is what I've tended to do is hire talented people, but who you really feel can get behind what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
give them a sort of mission and a vision that is sort of elevated. It's like a higher purpose than just coming to work. Then like creating the culture that they enjoy, the conditions that allow them to thrive, and then really stretch them, encourage them to take risks and move outside of their zone of comfort.
Yeah.
And I strongly believe that if you get those things right, you'll outperform. You can 100% beat a bigger player because they can't do all those things. They can do a lot of them. They got super bright people, incredible processes, loads of money to throw behind things, but the bit they can't do is make people really, really care. And go above and beyond because they really believe in what they're trying to do. Those moments where it's like, we finally got that listing in that supermarket that we've been trying to get for ages, and everybody's cheering, like the really high highs and the really low lows. But that, like, feeling all those bumps in the road is very unique to a small or medium-sized business that is a very significant competitive advantage with people.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And out of curiosity, are you working like what type of setup do you have? Are you working like remotely? Do you have like an office and people go into it?
Yeah, no, we've got an office, and people people tend to come in 2 or 3 days a week. So we've kind of got what's referred to now as a hybrid working culture, which I think works fine. Like we obviously went through COVID and everyone was remote, and then we sort of started to come back to the office. And then I found that people were putting in meetings for when they were in the office, and those days got really crammed, and you just see by how people operate that they actually just want to meet face to face.
Yeah.
And then we kind of realized that when you have half the people in and half the people out, it's just, it doesn't work because, the people who are dialing in I don't know what you find, but they're on the call exactly on the nose, whereas everyone else is getting a cup of tea and having a chat. And then the call finishes and the people who are in the room are still talking about the subject and making more. It doesn't really work. So we've got to a place where we're like, okay, we're all going to be in the office for these 2 days. Because we're just going to use that for meetings and collaboration. And then, like within teams, kind of pick times that work for you or just work from home.
Don't you think it would be very difficult to like create that outperformance culture and that sense of belonging, like being fully remote? I mean that. I think it would be right now. Maybe during COVID it was a different circumstance, but right now, I think that for most people, i.e., people that form like a company and then create a culture, it would be complicated.
Definitely, yeah, 100%. I believe quite strongly in that. I'm not a believer in. It's funny because I'm not a believer that everybody should be in the office like 5 days a week at 9 o'clock. That's so it's so you almost look back and think, why was I hacking through rush hour on a tube to get to a desk like that's in another place at 9 o'clock? That I don't believe. But yes, if you're trying to foster that culture of collaboration and a bit of creativity, but also where everyone's learning from everyone else, it's very tricky. I would imagine I'd personally find that very difficult to do totally remotely.
Yeah. And you've been in the company for 5 years, which is like, what, 5 years? You started like according to your LinkedIn in May 2020. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. Just right in the middle of COVID, Daniel. Yeah, right in the yeah.
So how's that journey been like? What have been like the key moments, the key milestones that you've had in this time?
Yeah, COVID was really difficult for all sorts of reasons,
Great onboarding.
Including yeah, exactly. It was, I didn't even meet anybody in the business face to face for months and months and months. So that was really tricky. I think the physical environment is really important. And so we after COVID, we moved offices to a really nice space, sort of near Tower Bridge in London, which was kind of like a big landing for us, a big milestone. And then, I'll kind of keep coming back to people because, as we started to bring in really great people who started to kind of really move the business forward, it got kind of really exciting from that point onwards.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You've worked in categories that like different categories, and some are less like, I don't know, like there's some segments that are clearly have grown a lot and some that haven't. Some maybe sexier categories, so some non-unsexy categories. Yeah, how have you played in these different ones?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've become quite obsessed with the unsexy ones, like the kind of more begrudged, boring ones, because I think that there's so much more in there to explore. And if I think it's just, so if I think about Merchant Gourmet, you know, what I always say is you're taking an enduring trend, which is never going away, and you're making it culturally relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of think really that's sort of how we applied it to household cleaning or to pet food, or you're finding something that people are always going to need and want, like, you know, so if you take Merchant Gourmet, right, it's just a whole natural, good quality food grown from the ground, minimally processed. Like everybody's always going to want that. But what's changed? Well, people have less time and people have way more choice. So what we've done is focused heavily on convenience for people who are time poor. And we deliberately, as I said at the beginning, made products that taste amazing because people have so much choice now. It's got to be an incredible product.
Mm-hmm.
Then if you think about methods that we talked about, everyone's always going to want to clean, but they made it cool and different. They created products that people wanted to leave out on top of the sink instead of underneath. Lily's, pet food, people having more and more pets, they're always going to need to feed them, but they found a really different route into that. So they're categories that I think are really interesting. I don't know if you may not have seen, but there's a really interesting, it was a startup, but it's gained some momentum now called Surrey, that create toothbrushes.
Oh, yeah. Have
you seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great business. It's just a great example of everybody's going to clean their teeth twice a day, but they've kind of created a product that looks aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah.
It's sustainable. Comes in a little case that cleans it for you.
Wow.
You know, you can charge it with a normal adapter. It's got a little magnet on the mirror. They just thought of everything, and the business is absolutely flying. So you can walk around a supermarket and look for the dustiest, most boring categories and kind of get underneath the rock, and there's so much opportunity there.
Well, in the US, I know that like they've even created like cool toilet paper brands or cool wipes brands and so on, right? So it is true. It's like, so it's not only about like, it's making a boring category cool, really, no?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, it's difficult not to say disrupting a boring category, isn't it? To kind of go back to the same word, but it really is, and finding very clearly how you're going to disrupt it, and then deliberately going after like breaking that one particular rule.
And do you have like a particular way, because you can like have your own thoughts and so on, but do you have a way that you contrast that with like consumer insights and what the consumer is thinking ultimately?
Well, I guess that falls into the kind of how do you make it culturally relevant bit, because the consumer, I guess consumer and trends, they move so fast. So what I always think is you have to sort of stay true to the bit that's enduring and the bit that's never going to change, and make those your red lines. So, if you sort of go back to Merchant Gourmet, we'll always make things minimally processed as we can. We always make things that are plant-based. We always try and create convenience in our products because they're just things that are never going to go. But then around the edges is where you can play, and the kind of consumer insights bit. We're always trying to keep track of. We've just done a kind of refresh with our brand where we've just made some like tweaks to kind of pull out the ingredients much more clearly of what's inside, because we know people really, really care about that. We've kind of called out our protein claims a bit more because that is a thing at the moment. That's very important to people. So I guess it's sort of boxing off the bits that you're not going to change and then working out the consumer trends and being quite flexible and iterating all the time within those.
How easy is it for you guys to change the packaging and to these type of product changes?
It it's quite easy because we don't have layers and layers and layers of process to go through. And also, I'm very comfortable with us just trying, like getting 80% right and sort of just making a decision and then just trying it and saying, actually, do you know what? That like the consumer will be the judge, and if it's not selling or the rate of sales dropping, we'll just change it again. I think, too often you can just spend so long trying to find every single insight under the sun and kind of get paralyzed by data and just you move too slowly. So we're quite happy. I mean, we've done so much innovation and so many changes, and we've sort of come to accept that some of it will work and some of it won't. But if you just focus on very quickly understanding what's not worked and why, and then iterating fast, I find that quite an effective way of working.
Yeah. No, and what about like marketing? Because you're competing with brands that have like huge budgets where you don't. Like, what's the most smart way of doing marketing? Because obviously you're doing well as a company, so you must be doing something well.
Yeah, I don't know. I always struggle a bit with that. I mean, in its most simple form, we always say our best bet with a limited marketing budget, or a lot more limited than a lot of bigger players, is to kind of what we always say, win at the point of purchase, which actually you can do through beautiful packaging. You can do through communicating really heavily, being very targeted about how you do your marketing to hit the right consumer.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to just trying to spread yourself too thin and move too far out of where the consumer's making their purchase decision. So I think that's one thing. And then probably the other thing is getting the tone of voice right. And again, we've sort of struggled with that because we came in and said, well, let's try and be a bit edgy and different and genuinely be disruptive. But we kind of quite quickly realized that's just not what the brand is. And it's not, consumers can very quickly sniff out where you're trying to be something that you're not.
Yeah.
It just jars. And, we sort of tried like big, strong impact statements and making things about plant-based and the planet because it was a thing, and suddenly realized actually we just need to get really comfortable in our own skin and like own who we are. And actually, if you do that and become really authentic, people relate to it really well. Like even the younger consumer, they relate so much to confidence and personality. Because as I've said before, like a lot of the time, they're still trying to understand exactly who they are and what their place is in the world. So when they see a brand who is very confident about that, they can actually resonate much more than if you're trying to be, a little bit edgy or kind of a bit cool. It's a bit painful when you do that.
Yeah. And what is the tone that you found between where you were and who you maybe really are, and finding that authenticity? Like, what is your current like positioning or messaging?
Yeah, I think we're that kind of, oh my goodness, my marketing team are going to kill me. I think we're that like kind of sad, like geeky, obsessive person who's just passionate about food and the origin of grains and pulses. And we're like proudly obsessed with it. And we don't, in a very kind of confident way.
Yeah.
So we're not at all trying to hide from the fact we're gourmet. In fact, we've actually just changed our packaging. We used to say merchant, and then gourmet was written underneath in smaller letters. And we're like, no, it's like this is who we are. We're like a gourmet, confident, foodie brand. And so I think we're kind of loud and proud about that, and that personality feels so much more natural. Because I tell you why, Daniel, because it kind of like, I think it sort of reflects the founders. I said that the whole brand came up from food and a love of food. And it's tricky because I'm not the founder of the business. And actually all these businesses I've joined, whilst they're smaller, medium-sized businesses, I'm not the guy that actually started it. So you have to kind of really get under their skin and work out who they are.
Yeah.
And then try to become that person. So yeah, that's a long answer to your question. So I think,
No, but it's good. I mean, I think it's, instead of being just like very aspirational and like creating like all this smoke in some way around the brand, it's being like, okay, this is like what we are. This is like our product and we're proud of it. So it's being, sometimes like there's a thing in marketing saying, yeah, you have to try to solve the need or like what the consumer is looking for. But I think that also, well, sometimes the consumer is looking for the actual product, right? Especially if it's food, it's something they're putting in their system, and it's something, especially like in your segment where you're looking for a certain acquisitive like power or purchasing power, well, then it makes a lot of sense
yeah, definitely.
to focus on like the quality of the product.
Does that resonate with you? Like when you're making your shopping decisions or when you're looking at brands that you connect with? What? Yeah, so that very much resonates with you as well.
I mean, when it comes to food, for me, it's like very important that the food is like fresh and not processed. That's like super important to me. So yeah, I'll very, very rarely not buy fresh food personally. But I think it goes also with a certain level of like education, culture. I mean, to be honest, fresh fruit and vegetables are not expensive here in Barcelona, but which I know in the UK it's a different story. Especially because you know that like here, like the fruit and vegetable that we find in fruit and veg stores, but also in supermarkets, are seasonal. So you don't always find the same thing all year round. So that keeps also the prices low. Less offer, but better prices probably.
Well, you're right. And also you're right on the education bit, because I think, people in Spain, France, like I think people understand that there is a seasonality behind food, and they kind of understand that, there's a different type of food that's going to be in season, and they'll buy in different seasons and different times of the year, rather than kind of expecting everything to always be on a shelf in the supermarket. And if you can do that, as you say, then you're not sort of paying for something to be, I don't know, like given a long life or packaged to within an inch of its life and transported, all around the world, etc. So yes, I think that's a very aspirational model.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, speaking about retailers, so you came up through the ranks of Mars, classical key account type of relationship. How has it been for you? Like, how is it for you right now? Like when you go and speak to a big retailer from a smaller brand, does it change the dynamic much?
Yeah, it does. And again, I think you have to kind of look at what gives you the angle and what gives you the edge. And I don't think there's anything new here, but like we talk a lot in stories. I think storytelling is critical in sales, like to kind of explain, okay, this food that you're eating, these Puy lentils are grown in these like small cooperatives of farmers in volcanic soil. They're rotated. There's no pesticides. We pay exactly the right price each year to help support them. This is where they come from. This is where they arrive. So I think, as opposed to trying to sell like the features and benefits of a product, I think telling stories is really important.
Really?
And I also think trying to represent the brand in who you are and how you speak. Like I remember at Method, we made a really clear effort just never, ever to take slides to retailers. Because I know in a number of competition, in our competitors, you just turn up with a deck of slides and bang through 20 slides to a buyer and you can see their eyes glaze over. So have the detail, send it all in advance, but come and talk. And then have the product and show the product. Same with Lily's Kitchen. We used to take the pet food, put it in front of the buyer and eat it. Like to kind of genuinely to like demonstrate the fact that actually it's like human grade product that you're giving people. I'm prepared to say. And so things like that, I love. Like I love the idea of, so when the team go and see retailers and I go and see retailers, like never take slides, always take the food, like heat it up, like eat it, have it out, celebrate it, like be the brand. Don't turn up in, I think like don't turn up in a kind of suit with a huge deck of slides and lots of copies of things because you're just the same as everybody else.
That's interesting. Because there's so much narrative about like, yeah, you have to bring the data to the table, and like bring facts. But what you're talking about is very qualitative, not quantitative. So, and you think that this still really works for at least for smaller businesses, it's effective.
Well, I think so because I'm trying not to talk in in like metaphor, but you're just selling to people.
Yeah.
And people love stories, and like this is so cliched. It pains me to say it, but like people do buy from people. So I just see so many times like buyers can have quite emotional connections to the brands that you're selling because they spend, in my world, they spend 90% of their time dealing with points of margin and arm wrestles between massive businesses. And I'd love to think that they look forward to coming in and seeing somebody who's like super passionate about an upstart business. They'll emotionally connect with it, which they're not supposed to do, but I think they do.
Yeah, it's a way of like hacking the system in some way, no?
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it. I totally get exactly hacking the system.
Yeah. I love it.
You gotta find the edge.
And I know that even if you're now like in terms of your brand, like branding, maybe like even like company personality and so on, you're like going very strong on like the product, the quality. I know that you still have a very strong commitment to sustainability and ethical trade and so on. How do you actually effectively embed that into your business, but still having a focus on making money?
Yeah. Well, I think transparently, this is where the kind of humility comes in, because the reality is that the business wasn't created to be an impact ethical business. It was created out of a love for food. So, I think, I talk a lot about progress, not perfection, and that we're not perfect and that we weren't born out of a need to be or want to be making a true difference to society, but we need to get better and better and better at that. So the sort of answer to your question is that there are certain things that we are really good at. We're a plant-based business, and we encourage people to put more plants on their plate. And we know that if we do that and people eat a little bit more plants because they're accessible and taste good and a little bit less meat, it will be good for the planet and it will be good for people's health.
Yeah.
The products that we produce they're either ambient, predominantly ambient, or some lines that are frozen. But we do a lot and talk a lot about food waste and how you can kind of eliminate, or not eliminate, but how we can reduce food waste by the type of products and the long life products that we sell. But the kind of the progress bit is that, again, transparently, because the products are long life and they're easy to ship and light to ship, they're in plastic pouches, which, I mean, certainly in the UK, the infrastructure doesn't exist to recycle those from the curb. So that is creating a problem, and we're creating a problem there. So I think you kind of need to be honest about that and say, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to help to kind of reduce that footprint? So we've partnered with a recycle scheme, and you can post the packs back free of charge and get them recycled. And that's one small step forwards, because, how many people are going to do that? But at least we have a route to recycling. And then the next job that we're working really hard on with our pouch suppliers is actually how they can be recycled. So yeah, again, kind of a long answer, but I think being really good at the things that we're good at, but also honest enough to say that we still have progress to make, is kind of how we approach sustainability.
Yeah. No, and it's interesting because it's not always easy, to like convey it, but also you don't want to make it like the main feature of your product, because what you're selling is good, tasty food that's good for you, So,
that's a much more articulate way of saying what I just said. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Well, that's what I do for a living. What is your vision for the business in the coming, let's say, 2 years?
Um, I, I, I think just keep growing. I mean, we're at the moment. We're talking kind of just right at the end of May. We're this sort of calendar year. We're 45% growth, and we're kind of accelerating, which is really exciting. So I think that the vision really is to keep doing the work that we're doing, which is partly moving into new categories, where we think the brand has got a right to play and a right to win. But we can again kind of keep very much within those red lines of quality, and taste. And then also partly to continue to roll out in export opportunities and territories as well. So, we just had the discussion, and it's great that we're speaking from different countries, because the reality is that actually the trends that have driven that, the sort of following winds that have driven a lot of our growth, like people wanting to eat whole foods and people eating a little bit less meat and people wanting convenience, they're like global megatrends. They're not limited to the UK, but we haven't only recently have we done export. So there's a lot of opportunity there for us to go after. And I think, at its heart, I love sort of creating value and seeing things grow. And I think that it's probably what you'd expect me to say, but the plan is, the plan is how quickly can we double the business again? In the next couple of years.
The number one listener country of this podcast is the UK, but then the rest, which is a high percentage, it's in the US, in Germany, and other markets globally. So I'll leave your LinkedIn in the show notes, though. If anyone is interested in export opportunities, they can go your way. Just tell them kindly that you've listened to the FMCG Guys podcast. At least give us a bit of credit for that.
Do. Get in touch, 100%.
And Richard, this wouldn't be like an FMCG Guys episode if I didn't ask you our question that we ask all our guests, which is, if you went back to the beginning of your career, knowing what you've known and what you know now, which I'm sure you've had some good learning experiences, what would be that one piece of advice you would give yourself?
I wish I'd have prepared for this a bit, but I think I would say do everything that you can to avoid work-life balance ever even being a phrase that comes across your lips like that. And by that I mean, do the things that you're good at and do the things that you enjoy doing. Work in categories where you're the target market and you understand it, and work somewhere or build the culture where you can turn up to work and actually like be yourself. Don't try and be the person that you feel you need to be, because that's exhausting. And I think really, if you do all those things and you're prepared to work hard, like consistently show up, then I think you'll succeed. And I think, I've learned that the hard way, because I've done things. I've sort of made decisions that probably don't fit exactly into that model.
As we all, as the best of us have, Richard, as the best of us have. Sometimes you need the hard knocks to, I think, as long as you process them, even if it's painful, sometimes you process them and then you reflect on them and say, okay, I made this mistake, or I didn't take the right approach. It's not going to happen to me again. I think so when at least the next time you make the mistake, it's not so big of a mistake. So Richard,
Daniel, I have to throw this question back to you.
Yeah,
you've interviewed, like, your podcast's amazing. You've interviewed some really interesting people, and you've heard this question so many times. What's your thing?
What's my advice?
Yeah,
I think I shared it on another episode. I think it was something like that of the mistakes you make or the learnings you have, don't think that they're gonna end your career. Just try to learn from them and improve from there.
Yeah. Nice.
But I like yours as well. Like, don't let work-life balance ever like be like something you even mention. Because I think it's true. Even if you really like your work, if you forget about the other part, it's gonna come back to you. And I've seen that happen to many, many people, where they've been like loving their job, but then it takes over their life as well. So maybe they don't consider that to be affecting their work-life balance, but it's an issue because you need to also connect with yourself a little bit, no? Which is kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people can also prescribe to you what work-life balance is, which I find sometimes quite frustrating. It's like, you know, work-life balance is you need to finish at 5:30 and not send any emails ever until 9:00 the next. And I would find that incredibly stressful.
Impossible.
Like, that would ruin my work-life balance because I'd just be stressed. And so you have to kind of write your own rules to that, really.
Yeah. No, and that's a great thing of working in a place where you feel identified. So I'm going to try to very quickly summarize a bit what we've chatted about. I think it was interesting to hear about Merchant Gourmet, which may seem like an up-and-coming company, which it actually is, but it was also ironically founded 30 years ago. So it's nice also to have a certain story and a heritage as probably that backbone, and that focus on product I thought was super interesting, that you've kind of tried different things, but this is really where, at least right now, you're focusing now. Also, I like the fact from a marketing standpoint that you're focusing at winning at the point of purchase. So really focusing on that. It's also focusing on the product and really like making it different. From there, let me link it to like the way that you approach retailers. I was thinking that you were gonna say, like we tell them about like how they can grow a category or blah blah blah. But it was really like something more totally like qualitative, like really like establishing an emotional connection even with the buyer, which I thought was fascinating. From your like personal journey, there's a couple of takeaways that I think are very interesting. And well, more than like the leadership style. So you talked about like having an entrepreneurial culture, empowering, but also balancing that with some process. And I guess that with that process, you also mean some consistency. And also in terms of like more like the soft aspect is giving people a mission and a vision and creating a culture they enjoy and conditions for them to thrive and really stretch them and could create a culture ultimately to outperform. And we talked about like how important, I think for many people and for you personally, for your leadership style is that face time as well. Like to have a certain flexibility, but to have like a fixed amount of days in the office. And of course, how could I forget also like about the categories, some more household cleaning, pet food that may seem like maybe not the most exciting categories. The way to like approach them and make a difference is to create like a product, create an excitement around the category, because ultimately they're categories that are gonna have an impact on your day to day. So it can be very exciting. I totally agree with you. I get very excited about my consumer products. And also like you have 45% growth, not a given these days in FMCG. So I'm very excited to see how this journey continues.
Thank you. Yeah, and great to speak as well.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Richard, for joining, and thanks to our audience. And we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys. Have a great day.